Hopefully is Mike here?
Ah. Hey Jeff, how you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. What are you talking about, foreign language guy and all this stuff? Man, Ed's trying to throw me off.
You didn't know I speak other languages?
I said international man of mystery.
Oh, there you go. I like that.
Yeah. I figure it goes with the whole 007 theme.
There you go.
So
that's funny.
How you doing, Mike?
Good.
So I can see Ed, but I can't see Mike.
I'm hiding.
Listen, Mike's always a problem. That's part of our niche. Mike just messes it up every time.
All right. Well, as long as he's consistent.
Yeah, that's all you can ask for.
Oh, wait.
Is your camera on?
There you go. Now it is.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Right.
There you go.
Now I got East Coast and West Coast.
That's great. Yeah. It really is. It's the technology is amazing. You know, if you think about it, it's just like. So Mike, you record too, please, if you can, just in case I have any issues.
If I can, I'm on my computer again, so I don't know where that record is.
Never mind. Don't touch nothing. Leave it like this. I got it. I'm working. Last time you touched any buttons, we had a nightmare. So tell us, Jeff, tell us a little bit about what you did this weekend, then we'll kind of go backwards into your story. Because, like, Mike's my favorite person, and you're the guy I want to grow up to be. So I got.
Oh man, you guys are starting early. We just got back from Denver, Colorado. We were up there for the Dodge Mile High Nationals NHRA event, and every Thursday before the drag racing begins, Mopar does the big block party down there in downtown Golden, Colorado. So I host that with a gentleman by the name of Willie B, a local DJ in the area, big car fanatic. And so it's kind of fun to kick off the weekend that way. We go out there, we have a band that plays, and we do a show for probably about, we're up there for about 3 hours. So it's fun to engage with the fans, get them all wound up, introduce them to all the drivers. They do a autograph signing. So it's just a way to meet really cool people that are all about Mopars.
That's great. That's very foreign to me. So one thing I
really Mopar or block party?
No, the Mopars. I just never felt comfortable with them. I never felt like I knew enough about them to, kind of dive into it. But they're interesting. I almost bought a plum crazy purple, Challenger, one of those Charger, but it was like the guy finished the whole car, it was totally done. All I had to do was put it back together. Body work done, rotisserie. They wanted like nothing for the car. I didn't buy it, and I like kicked myself for it now. So, they're worth big bucks, but this was right before the value started flying on those cars. But again, I didn't know what I was looking at, so I probably could have taken it and messed it up. So,
Yeah, it's a weird love-hate relationship with me and Mopar. Years and years ago, I bought a 1970 Plum Crazy 440 RT Charger, 4-speed pistol grip car, and I decided I was gonna, at that point I'd restored quite a few Camaros, made a bunch of them into Yanko clones. That was kind of the sweet spot back then. Yeah. So then I thought, well, I can tackle a Mopar. What's the difference, right? So I jumped into that car, and the parts weren't as readily available as they are for Camaro or other domestic vehicles. And I mean, that thing fought me tooth and nail. And I swore at that point in time, I'm never going to restore another one at this level again. Just not going to do it, And that car went on to be on the cover of Muscle Car. There was like a Muscle Car Review magazine where we compared it to the 70 Charger to the new Charger when it first came out. And some other stuff came around about that car. And the thing is, I'm such a big guy, I fit well in those cars. Yeah. So it's hard for me not to like them, my first car was a 69 Z28, but, fast forward, I think I was around 32 years old when I bought another 69 Z28, and all the thrill was kind of gone because every time I'd let the clutch out, I'd hit the turn signals and hit the steering wheel with my knees. I just didn't fit really well, I'm more of a GTO or a Roadrunner or Cuda kind of size.
I got a customer that's about your size, and he brought me a 67 Camaro. And we literally, we put custom seats, we stretched them back. I'm moving the shifter back, and, you know, we're building a dash custom, but I'm trying to think about everything because he's now back further, and putting him in the car is ridiculous, but once he's in, he's comfortable now. Before it was like, you know, he's a big dude. So so now that's my thing. Now, like, you know, where will the shifter be? We put a 6-speed in it, and, you know, we're just trying to make all the creature comforts work for him, you know. But I know what you're saying. I'm not necessarily as tall as you, but I lost weight, but I was, you know, I remember I tried to get in this Corvette, and it was just such a nightmare. I fit in there. You'd hear like a pop when I got out of it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, like you and I, Ed, we definitely have an affection for C3 Corvettes. And, you know, recently I bought one that was an Eckler's Daytona bodied car, and I love those cars. I mean, you know, but every time I go and drive one, I'm not comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, they're so tight on the sides when the door panel hits that, you know, I'm literally, my knee is adjusting that remote mirror.
Yeah.
As I drive down the road. So, but I always try to find them a way to squeeze into one. You know, I don't know why.
Well, I had a C5 Corvette sitting for like 2 years in storage. You know, the car had like big rims, big system, and it was dropped, and, you know, matte black, the whole thing. And I finally said, you know, let me take it out for a ride. And it was so low, and because I haven't driven in the car for a while, I felt like I was laying on the ground because everything I had was SUVs after that. You know, so I'm driving this car, and I felt like I'm not safe in this car anymore. Like, I didn't feel that same, you know, after like 10, 15 minutes, you feel better. But that first, like, you know, that first blast and the tires were a little dry. So I just, you know, I almost lost it the first hit out of my shop, you know. I was like, but I remember thinking like, wow, I don't feel like, you know, being that close to the ground anymore. It just shows you as you get older, you know, the way your mentality changes a little bit towards, you know, the things you put yourself in, you know.
The ride height. So are we going to see more Ed's Customs lifted then?
No, this one's going low. The SEMA one I sent you, the picture I sent you, which is a mess.
Shh, that's a secret.
It's a secret. I'll send it to Mike too. I just wanted you guys to. I'm gonna send it to Mike, show him, but appreciate the width of what I'm trying to do with this thing. So,
hey, I like my show, but I have fun with Ed. You know, Ed's fun. So, and then Jeff, man, you're fun too. So.
Oh, thanks, brother. Thanks, man.
Good. You know, I'm sitting there when I was recording videos of you at SEMA when you're on stage. I'm sitting there recording the videos in the background, and you can hear me just totally cracking up because everything you say, man, I was just laughing. It was funny. Yeah. So
you got a very comforting. You're very comfortable, I should say, up on stage, which is good for someone like me to see. You know, because I'm starting to get to like, you know, some situations where I get plucked into it, and once I get over the initial, you know, the weirdness of it, it's fine. But every time it's new, even with cameras and stuff, you know, it's. Oh,
totally. And, you know, the other thing, too, to remember is, and it took me a while to, you know, understand it, and actually came from an acting coach that I had years ago. And she said, you know, when gladiators go into an arena, you know, don't think that they're not wound up. You know what I mean? And they don't have a lot of anxiety that's built into it. So she says, just embrace it and go with it. And it's taken me a long time to do it, you know, but it's just, you know, it's fun. It's fun to get out there in front of crowds. I don't know why. I mean, maybe it goes back to when I was in school and I was a class clown, you know, and maybe I'm just reopening those roots.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was always getting written up for it in school, and it wasn't in a positive way. So now I'm trying to make it positive.
You know, it's funny. I learned that from Dave Turin, I think. Dave has a great, comfortable way of talking to people, even at the shop. And then once he was on camera, I noticed that even when he slipped up, he wouldn't let it slip him up, if that makes any sense. He would make a mistake or say something wrong and then just correct himself and keep going without skipping a beat. You know, and that was like interesting. I'm like, he didn't let it get into his head. Where me, you know, years ago, I'd say something funny and I'd be thinking about what, you know, so let me ask you a question. How,
sure.
Mike, I know I didn't give you any fair warning of this podcast.
No.
But I know you know Jeff enough that I'm sure you have a handful of interesting things to ask him. how did you get started in the whole car thing? Like, what was your first car, and then where did that lead to becoming a builder / personality?
I mean, it's going to start back when I was either really young, and my parents went on date night and left me with a babysitter, and I took all my Hot Wheels and spread them all over the living room floor, and the babysitter fell asleep, and I decided to sneak in the garage, grab some of my dad's spray paint, and I painted all the cars on the carpet. Well, the color I picked was red. So obviously, when my mom got home, she thought I was bleeding to death. I had red all over. The babysitter had no idea what was going on, and now I had all these red Hot Wheels. So I think it started early on. My dad was a huge influence on me in the very early ages because he was building cars as he was in the Air Force. So, I grew up with that 57 Chevy that was on our show that my dad still has parked inside the house. And another car was a 67 Corvette, 427, 435 horsepower that he flared the fenders and filled the grill in and did some, back then those cars didn't hook up well with those skinny tires. So I got it. You needed to flare them to put some meat underneath them, had big side pipes on them. I remember burning my leg as a real young kid, and I named I named the car Hot Pipes, and it kind of stuck, and it was because I lost some back of my calf on those, chrome side pipes. So I think the drive was there early on, and then it started with building models, and then I worked at my dad's automotive shop. So like in the summers when everybody else was going to summer camp or Disneyland, I was in the shop sweating, emptying trash, doing whatever, and then started as I got a little older, 11, 12. Huh?
It's funny how you look at that. Then it was probably
miserable.
Like, oh, shit, my friends are out at Disney and getting away. But now you look back, especially me, it was kind of the same thing, but I didn't have a dad. I just kind of forced myself to work. But now I look back at the people that are maybe regretting a little bit that they never took anything as seriously as I took it, when I didn't realize I was paying myself something. There was value there. And I'm sure you didn't see it either when you were stuck in a hot shop and your friends are out doing what they want to do. And I kind of have the similar story.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was always, not really excited to go back to the next year or the first day of school because everybody, what do you do on the first day of school? The teacher makes you get in front of the class and tell you what you did all summer, and I'm still looking under my fingernails going, is this grease ever going to come out? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, I was never excited about that day. And then, I think I was like 13 years old, and my dad came to me and he said, you've saved up all this money working for me every summer and during all the breaks and all that stuff. What do you want to do with it? And I said, I want to buy a car. And so we set out that whole summer chasing. Back then you didn't have Auto Trader, you didn't have all that. So it was all, you literally had a roll of quarters and you were stopping in towns and you were calling.
Yeah, you saw a car on the lawn. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember those days. How much you want for the Camaro?
Yeah. Yeah. So I bought my first 69 Camaro, Z28, at the age of 13. It was a Cortez silver with black striped car. And of course I wanted Hugger orange, but we ended up with Cortez silver, but, I'll never forget the car. Never got to drive it.
What happened?
Well, I became 15. My dad took me out to Buffalo Lake, and he kind of blew the tires off of it a little bit. And then I guess that night he went home and told my mom, there's no way we're letting Jeff drive this car because he'll kill himself. I mean, you think about it. No power steering, no power brakes, four-speed car. Awful lot of power. So I ended up, that's kind of how the whole car flipping thing worked out because they somehow convinced me, parents have a way of doing that. They convinced me to sell my car. So we sold the car and I made like $5,000 on top of what I had invested in it. So I was like, wow, this is cool. So what can I buy with all this money? And this guy pulled into my dad and my uncle's dealership, and he was driving a slammed 1985 GMC short wide bed that was just sitting on the ground with center lines, and I was in love. I mean, I need to have that truck, Yeah. And I had enough money to get it, so that was really my first ride,
Okay.
a gutless 305, but just, man, looked cool as could be sitting on the ground, you know?
That's great. Yeah, that was always my anything lowered I fell in love with, you know.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
so that was kind of it with me. And then, immediately, I think my first introduction to modifying a car, the 69 Camaro, it was such a pure car that I didn't have the heart to change anything on it. Even though I wanted to paint it hug orange, we never did. It was a Cortez silver car, and how do you do that, right?
Yeah.
And but when I got the truck, the first thing that had to happen, I needed that Alpine in there.
The six buttons, the six.
Yeah, with the little square green button. Had to have an Alpine. And so
most of them came out of Porsches that were stolen and sold at a back alley to somebody for $50.
That's right. But that was like the most important thing at the time, and for me. And then fast forward, that's when the IROC Z was really starting to pick up, and things were starting to move, and I got really tired of that truck. Not that I didn't love the truck, but I just got tired of it really quick. And I think my mind was I needed an IROC Z. And I thought that was the car, T-tops. I had to have all that,
I got one right now. I just finished painting a month ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, black one, yeah.
Yeah, so 2-port injection, wow, now we're at what, 205 horsepower. You think of those numbers today, and it's just like mind-blowing that we have cars coming out of the factory with 700-800 horsepower. You're amazed that there's not more fatalities on the road.
Oh, God, yeah. Well, they handle a little better.
Yeah.
They're a little better. They turn a little better. They stop a little better. Mike, what was your first car?
Well, I, of course, drove the parents' Tornado.
Oh, okay.
79 front-wheel drive, 350, and I could smoke the tires on that thing.
That's all
nice.
Don't tell them that, but then I started looking at cars, and the first car I looked at was a 55 Chev with a 454, and my parents were like, "No way, you're not getting that," So then I ended up getting a 67 Chevelle.
Oh, that's a good car.
But it was only a 283, and I probably pushed that car more than I drove it because something would happen to it. So I literally pushed it. I don't know how many times in my growing up in high school, So, but then after that,
you're better off pushing something cool than driving something that's not
That's
cool.
right.
I had a 67 Fairlane with the 390. That was a fun car. When I test drove it, I got sideways down the street, and I'm like, "Yeah, I like this car." So
it's so that being out of control is such a great feeling. Now, if that happens, I'm like, "Oh God, what's that?"
Then I bought a new S10 pickup when I was just graduating from high school, and I.
Is that the one painted the candy paint?
Yeah, I painted it candy. It was an 87 brand new, and I stripped it down. My parents wanted to kill me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, well, I don't have a classic car to paint, so I just stripped down the paint and painted this. So
that's awesome.
Couldn't say much after that.
Back then, too, you think about that, and I see a lot of those, from the mini truck era starting to pop up now for sale. And I think that's so cool. Like when you see those mini trucks that were all tricked out. That was a big thing when I was raised in Lubbock, but we moved back to California where I finished high school. And when I first got there, the mini truck scene was outrageous. Everybody was driving Nissan and Toyotas that were just slammed and all tricked out. It was amazing.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get to that point. I did have low profile tires and everything on it. And in this area, I'm in Minnesota, in 87, people are like, "What the hell are you doing putting low profile tires on that truck?" And I was probably one of the first people who had low profile tires on a truck around here because, that's kind of crazy back then.
Yeah.
They give me a hard time in high school because they said, "What are you going to do? Lower it? What are you going to do? Lower it?" Everything I talked about, that's all they ever said to me.
I remember I had an S10 also, and I remember the first time I went down to Florida, and we saw all the Dr. Dre videos with the hydraulics and stuff, and I was like, "That's cool, right?" When I went to Florida and saw cars with actually hydraulics, I already had my kit and I was starting to put it in, but I actually didn't fire my whole system up. And I was literally about to like put the car together, and I had all the lines ran, but I didn't finish it. We went to Florida, and like we pulled into the first gas station, and some S10 pulled some ratty S10, like falling apart with some cheapo wire wheels. And he pulled up next to us, and he dropped that thing on the ground, and I was like, oh, my heart, like I just fell in love. I was like, I wanted to leave Spring Break Nationals in Daytona Beach just to go home and finish my truck. So, then we got the car done, and like back then the hydraulics came in a box with like a million fittings. I had no clue what I was doing. The directions looks like a kid drew it with crayons. It didn't make any sense, but I got lucky. Common sense prevailed. You put everything together. The only thing I didn't do is like in my head, common sense told me to bleed the lines, right? So I have my two dopey friends with their hood, their heads under the hood. And I got the front cylinders cracked open a little bit. I got 4 batteries, 48 volts running to these things. And I just, and I hear it spool up, and I don't see anything. And I go, oh, shit, hold on. I hit it again, and the oil, caught, ran through the lines, and literally just drenched my whole garage. My friends were covered in gear oil. I mean, it went past them and on the wall. So anything that didn't hit the walls hit them. And they're just, And I said, oh, shit, I guess we tightened them up. Man, we hit it. We took that car out. And there was another kid who was older who was doing it also. And I heard because when we go to the store back then, there was like one place to buy batteries. So I walk in asking for 4 deep cycle, group, whatever, 20 cents, the big ones, And they go, oh, some other kid is buying 4 batteries for his truck. And I'm like, son of a bitch, he's trying to get the hydros done before me, And he was like the smarter kid, he was the one everyone looked up to. I was like the dopey kid. Like I had to prove myself. Like when I started sanding my car, everybody was like, oh, you're going to paint your car? And then it came out gorgeous. And then, oh, you want to paint my car? It was like the attitude, flip-flopped, But I still remember the first time there was a big car club meet by us. And it was like, sometimes there's 500 cars there. And we pulled in with this S10 with the 2 pumps, front, back, side to side. And we pulled into the middle and just dropped the side of it. And like hundreds of people, they just went insane. Like it was crazy. And I remember thinking like it was such I love the idea that I could just drop my truck. So then I had it right to the ground. I mean, like I had a coil and a half of spring wrap. Like I don't even know how my spring stayed in. Because back then they didn't have the recessed cups. They had just the regular cups. So you had, inside the control arm and inside the frame, you had to take up a lot of space for that. So then I made my own drop control arms and stuff so I can get a little bit of spring. I use Mustang springs to get it to ride better. And that was my trick. Nobody knew. I put a Mustang spring in a Chevy truck because all the Chevy coils are so tall that if you cut them, you got nothing left. But that was a moment for me. The lowrider thing, I loved it, man. Everyone's like, oh, white guy with a lowrider. I'm like, man, I don't care. This thing is awesome,
Well, you can get them pretty cheap right now. I think they're selling. I look at some of the mini trucks for sale, and they're if you want to get into something, if you're younger, why don't you start there?
Yeah, it's I think all that stuff's gonna come full circle. It's gonna come back because now if you're a kid, if you have a Honda, it's like everyone has a Honda. But if you're that kid that's got the muscle car, you're that kid that's got that lowrider, you're that kid that's got that something different. I think you'll stand out more.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing that all over the place. Like you even look at the auctions and, the normal stuff isn't bringing what it used to. And the abnormal stuff is bringing more than anybody expected. So I think that's what it is everybody wants to have that identity and to be able to say, hey, look at my ride. And there's not 4 more driving down the street. So.
Yeah, I kind of think that way too. When I see something different, I think, man, that's cool. That's what I see when I'm out at the shows and stuff, taking pictures.
You know what I like about these the imports and some of these, I guess you could say imports. Sometimes the creativity is so refreshing. Like people would think I wouldn't like some stuff, but I see like, there's a kid that has a whole car painted nice. And then his whole firewall is stickers, but done nice. I'm like, you know what? Like, there's something cool about that. Or they'll take a turquoise car and put a bright gold wheel on it. Something that you wouldn't think would work on paper. But then when you see it happen, you're like, it took, it took some balls for that kid to be like, man, I'm putting pink wheels on a green car, and that's how I like it, you know? So that's what I got from Florida. Like when I went down to Florida and I saw all the cool cars. I'll tell you a great story. We went and met these guys from a little car club, and they had just like 10 cars, 20 cars of their group, and we were from New York, so they were like, hey, man, come hang out with us and blah, blah, blah. So the first day, this kid pulls up in a station wagon, totally stock. The next night, he pulls up. It's got gold wire wheels, a full hydro setup, a big target top cut in it. There's still metal all over the car. I mean, like literally, there's metal shavings like everywhere. This kid's got this thing dropped on the side, like, and it was just like, you took a wagon, a car that most people would say is not interesting, and now it's one of the coolest cars to me, like out there. I was like bugging out. I'm like, this thing's awesome. You know, I had little 13-inch Daytons on it. So Florida really helped shape my head a little bit, you know, because there was so many different styles there. You know, New York, it was like, it went from the muscle car to the import, you know, and then it was like big stereo systems. I did a lot of stereo systems. That's kind of where I started my business. But it was so refreshing to see something like most people look and say, oh, that car's got its wheels poking out, you know, a foot on each side. To me, I'm like, that's the coolest car here, you know. So it was a big impact on my life getting down to the Daytona Beach show.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, what I kind of miss about being in Southern California as much as I used to be, because the car scene out there is really diverse, and you see all kinds of stuff going on, from the JDM guys to the European guys to the muscle car guys. And one of the things I love about going to SEMA every year is seeing that combination that maybe you didn't think of, or something that you weren't feeling like, you know, I want to take a chance on a car. Because, you know, for me, it was always, for years, it was like I just built stuff that I liked, but then at the end of the day, I needed to sell it to make a profit, to buy something else that I liked. So my color palette would get a little jaded, because I knew if I built, you know, a black car, red car, you know, I knew what they would do and how much they would sell for, you know. But, you know, you see some of these browns and these earth tones that are being used, or like you said, a turquoise car with pink wheels, and you think on paint, you know, just saying that, you go, what are you, nuts? You know? Mm-hmm. And it was like when we built the Volvo was like, I was like, I want it to be loud. I want it to be in everybody's face. Okay, well, how do I accomplish that? And at a few of the auctions and car events I went to, I kept like a magnet, kept getting attracted to this weird, almost ugly BMW gold color, you know, that was on the M3s. And I'm like, man, that's ugly, but it's almost cool. It's so ugly. And then I was like, that's what I'm going to paint my car. And then Meg was like, you know, it's got to have white wheels. And she's been wanting to do white wheels on a car forever. And I'm always like, man, that's a pain in the butt to clean. But I'm like, you're right. It needs white wheels, you know, and that's awesome. Yeah, and then you tie it all together and you see the impact it makes, and people are like, hey, this is really cool. And you're like, okay, job done, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think that's, you know, that's kind of like with this car I'm doing. I kind of want a lot of people to not like it. Like, I want people to appreciate it, but like I'm building it to be like the opposite of because like my hands are totally tied here, because somebody, you know, my customers generally want, I want blue, I want black, I want this, I want that. They may see this and go, oh, wow, I like what you did there. Do something like that for me. But most of it, my hands are tied. So with this, I'm doing like every dumb idea I get, like the dumber it feels, the more like attention I'll give it now. You know, like I'll write it down on my board and I'll put like a circle around it. Like, this feels really dumb. So let's keep looking at this idea. Maybe there's a better way of doing this idea, you know, rather than just, you know, with, like I said, with customer cars, or even we got approached by doing some TV stuff, and it was basically like a Gas Monkey type of show, basically copying Gas Monkey more or less. And that's cool and everything, but you're still trying to please the masses, you know? And like, to me, what I love about rat rods is like, you're really not. Like, even though my car's not, I guess it's definitely a rat rod, but it's going to be a little different. You know, I'm trying to approach it like my own way. But that's what I love about it. So like, this car is bringing my passion back to it. You know, like, I don't know if you experienced this, but I got to a certain point where like you ask yourself, when will I know if I'm successful at this, right? And then I guess I've hit that point and I'll go, oh, wow, okay, I'm making some money and, you know, people are happy. But the more you start making people happy, the less you're getting in here from your passion that, for me, that drove me to this. So this, I get that. Like, I'm sure you know what I mean. Like, you take a risk on an idea, and then you build it, and then you go, oh shit, that's working. And then you get that feeling, you know what I mean? Like that feeling when that seed of an idea starts to turn into something that you can see.
Yeah.
I live for that idea. Like that feeling, to me, I'm an addict for that idea. And this car has it all over it. And then it's like funny where one thing matches something else, you know, and you're like, oh wait, but this works with this. We didn't even see that yet, you know? So that's what this car is for me. It's just like total freedom, you know?
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think that's what we all want to do. We all want to do something that's outside of the box, but it gives us a chance to express ourselves. And I think that's what I like when I see a car that's off the wall now. You know, like, I mean, there's some really clean cars that show up at different events, and you're just like, man, that you can count the hours that went into the build. But then sometimes there's this really, like, I don't even know what you want to call it, like a mutant shows up, and you're just like, whoa, you're mesmerized. Like,
That's what I'm
do
with.
that, you know? And you want to dive into that and go, oh wow, what were you thinking here? And I think a lot of the world gets that way. We had a customer come down and bought one of my rat rods a few years back, and guy shows up in like a $500,000 toter home and 2-car stacker trailer, and we go around the block, and he's like, oh, I'll take it. I'm so excited. And he goes, you know, normally I spend like $100,000 to $150,000 to have these high-end hot rods made, and I drive them to a show and nobody looks at them. So I'm buying your rat rod because that's where all the attention's at. And it's funny how things switch, you know?
Yeah. There's a big show by me. It's called it's a Bear Mountain. It's like a big area, recreational area, and they have a big car show, and it just went crazy. Like, I knew some of the guys that ran it. I judged the big show a couple times, and on a Wednesday night they make it sometimes 800 or 1,000 cars. It's like you would never believe it. Like parking lots full of cars, bikes, Lambos, Jeeps, hot rods, rat rods. And I remember it's funny, there was a purple Mustang, purple Camaro, a friend of mine had for years. I always looked up to the car. It was gorgeous. Paint job. It's probably 20 years old now. Still looks beautiful. And you almost can't walk past this car. And his car was 2 cars away from this rat rod pulled in. And you might as well put a cardboard box over his car, because there was like 30 people swarming this rat rod that probably had a third of the money in it. But it was interesting. You know, it's like what I like about seeing a rat rod, like for me, I almost am interested, like your rat rod, what made you build it, why you built it, you know, what was the inspiration, what parts did you find, what's the story? They tell stories, right? Like a beautifully restored car is great, but it doesn't really tell a story. You know what I mean? So that's what I love about rat rod. To me, if I could just build rat rods and not do anything else, that's all I would do. And if you ever see me get there, that means I've hit my freedom mode. Yeah.
There you go. Well, that's what you got to strive for that, because believe me, there's a lot of people out there paying for rat rods to be built still. So
yeah.
That craze kind of hit its peak, and then it dived down a little bit, but I see it picking back up, and I think it comes back to that whole thing. It's like, I think Chip Foose coined a phrase the most, that he said, he would much rather see people out there building cars than buying cars, and I think it's very easy to go to a dealership nowadays, and they're making them so cool right out of the factory. There's very few things that you can modify on some of them to make them even cooler. Sometimes they go backwards, in my opinion, when they get modified. Yeah. But so I think, the days of buying that car is really cool. But then when you can show up and you build something that's special and it has a backstory to it, that just goes further for me. I mean, it's like, I love all the new cars that are out there. I mean, they just introduced a wide body Hellcat Charger at the event I was at, and I was like, cool. But what I thought to myself was, like, Dodge, man, let the Ed Goldens of the world wide body that. You know what I mean?
I did a wide body Charger that I almost fit. I just got to paint the front fenders. And in my opinion, not toot my own horn, but I think it looks better than the factory one. And everyone said that. Some people that saw it, they're like, "Wow, that's great." I love the new. What do you think about the new Corvette? Both of you guys.
Ouch.
I think they're gonna. I still think they're gonna sell. I still think they're gonna sell because of the price.
They're gonna sell.
Yeah,
it's gonna be like getting an exotic car budget price.
Yeah.
So I think.
Yeah, I have an issue. I've had an issue with Corvette for several years, and I've owned them. So I mean, I can't knock them. Their power plant, their performance levels have always been up there. I mean, they're very high, and they're very easy to work on. My issue is the fact that they always seem to be chasing Ferrari. And even if you look at the styling cues of the new one, and you look at a 430 Ferrari, or you look at even an Italia, you can see where they get their ideas from. And even when you read back to like when the introduction of the '84 Corvette came out, you know, that whole bodyline seam was based off of a 308 Ferrari. So I don't know. I have a hard time wrapping my head around it. I think price point wise, it's going to sell like hotcakes. I mean, especially there's going to be dealers that are going to order base ones for 60 grand, and they're going to sell. They're going to just go everywhere. I think I don't know. I don't know that. I think it's cool for a certain genre. I don't think it's cool for me.
Yeah,
that's because you're probably more of a Ferrari guy, aren't you? I mean, really.
Well, I just think I would rather have an older Ferrari than the newer Corvette for the same price. You know what I mean? It just, I think that if you look at the styling cues over the years, and Corvette just keeps taking from those. So like you look at the C6 headlights are really, you know, a 360 headlight from a earlier '99 Ferrari, and you know, there's just too many commonalities into them. You know, Meg used to have a C5 Corvette, and then I had her get in a '99 355 Ferrari, and she goes, "I feel like I'm back in my Corvette." Mm-hmm. You know, so I don't know. I mean, obviously they'll come out with a ZR1 that'll be wicked. You know, they'll come out with a Z06 that's gonna, you know, blow the world up. I think it's about time they came up with a mid-engine car. But I look at the C3s, the C2s, and the C1s, and I see genius in those cars and the design.
Oh, you mean? Yeah. Well, they had a lot of originality. There's spirit in those cars.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think to me those are Corvettes, you know?
When we moved out of Queens, New York, and we moved upstate, right? First of all, we were, you know, it was like heaven. To me, where we were moving to, my house might as well have been a castle compared to where we were living in Queens. And the guy's name was Harry Gherkin. And when we opened the garage door, I always say this, like, I feel like the spirit of him and that garage, like, jumped into me, because there was a I think it was a split window. So whatever year that 66
63.
Okay. I know cars. I don't know all the details. My brain only has so much room inside it.
I hear you.
It was a split window, and it was the fastest Corvette in the country for like a year or whatever. At this point in time, this is going back ages. But in every room in the house, there was trophies. And I mean, the bathroom had racing trophies. The basement had racing trophies. The kitchen had racing trophies. Inside the garage was this Corvette and just stacks of slicks. Like, you couldn't have fit a deck of cards in there because there was so many like car parts. So I always joke that, like, when he left, you know, the spirit, 'cause he was an older guy at this point, the spirit of him jumped into me. And I just remember, like, Corvettes always had that special, you know, that special feeling. Like, I remember when I saw them, it just, even as a kid, I just knew there was something about that car that was different than everything else. You know, even Corvette Summer, I saw that movie. I wasn't even, you know, I wasn't even into cars really. You know, like, I love cars. I love Matchbox cars. You talk about painting them. I used to have more Matchbox cars than any kid on the planet. I literally had big drawfuls, right? My first bicycle, I spray painted. They brought me this beautiful blue bike, right? You know, like, my family. So, like, after it was like, I don't know, 3 months old, I painted the whole thing dog shit brown. Everything, the grips, the tires, the chain. You know, I may have told you this already. But that's kind of how I got started. Just changing the color of something to me was amazing. So, right. Like, you know, you take that, and then all these like little hot rods. It's really funny how much, because like I always say that this car I'm building, I want to build my version of a Hot Wheels car. So that's really what I'm looking at. When I look at it, I want, even though it probably will never happen, I want it to be my version of what a Hot Wheels car would be. And like my first car was a Camaro, a '79 Camaro, so that's why I'm going to that generation Camaro. So, but the Corvette to me was always special, you know. Even the C5, even though that's when they started blending to more of a Me Too car, I guess is the best way to say it. My teacher let me go into the GM room, and he said, "Ed, go get me the projector," right? And the GM was a part of the school that we couldn't go to. Like, it was a college, right? Hudson Valley Community College. My teacher, Mr. Smith. So he goes, "Ed, go into the GM room and get me the projector," right? And we walk into this room. It's pitch black, and there's like 12 spotlights over this blue C5 Corvette. And like me and my buddy were like, "Oh my God, close the door." You know, we sat there for like an hour just touching it, and you know. So that's when I knew I wanted a C5, you know. But the older ones have that personality, you know. So I think that's what I'm always trying to put back into cars, you know, inject a little bit of personality back into them, which sometimes you get the leeway to do and sometimes you don't.
True. Very true. Very true.
That yellow car inspired me. I don't mean to cut you off, but that yellow car, that was a brave step, because there are some people that are just going to hate on the car because just what it is, and not without looking at it and realizing how much was done, and how that was one of my favorite cars at SEMA. And that's just not like, when I think about SEMA, that's one of the cars that just pops into my head. It's like I have a downloaded file of it when SEMA comes into my brain, and I remember looking at it, and not just because it's yours, but just the idea of it. I'm like, that's a fresh take on what this, you know, whole thing is, where it should be heading, you know.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it was definitely hard to explain to everybody what I wanted to do. You know, but it really, and it actually came about because the year before, when we went to SEMA and we unveiled Ronin, the '63 Ford Falcon, everybody thought that we just took that '63 body and slipped it on the Mustang, because we morphed the dash and the console and all the Mustang components into that Falcon. So everybody thought, oh, you just slipped the body over a Mustang chassis. And I'm like, no, that might have been easier, you know? So like when we came back from that experience, I was like, you know, what could we slip the body over? And the funny thing is, like you said, I had it at the time, I had a 03 Z06 that was making 831 horsepower to the wheels. Supercharged car. It's wicked, nasty car. And I bought this old Volvo when I was in California, and it was sitting in the shop. And I literally came back from driving the Z06 and parked it right next to it. And I got out, and I was having a conversation with Eric, who was on the other side of the Volvo. And as I was looking at the wheelbase.
That's so funny.
I'm like, wow, this is pretty close. So I
knock you in the head, huh?
Yeah. So I told Eric, I said, grab a tape measure, and we're measuring wheelbases. We're measuring width of the frame, and you know, and nobody believes this, but the Volvo, you know, we sat the body with the original, you know, door sills still in place and slipped it over the frame, and we only had to cut a 1/4 inch on each side of the frame to make it fit. I mean, it was that close.
Oh, shit! Wow.
And we wouldn't have had a problem if I would have stayed with a C5, but I went to a C6 because I was like, oh, you know, I want to use the newer technology, right?
Yeah, saying, yeah.
So, you know, I used a 2013 Grand Sport as my, you know, donor car, and I mean, I'm real happy with the car the way it turned out. I hope that, you know, after SEMA and then it goes to Barrett-Jackson in 2020, I hope it brings a lot of money and a lot of attention to people that get an opportunity to go to, you know, get a scholarship out of it, you know, from the proceeds. So
cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's
yeah.
Cool.
And Mike, you got a chance to videotape all that, right?
Oh yeah.
Didn't you have a great story about walking down a runway or something like that?
I don't know. I don't even know if Jeff heard the story or not, but
well, now's a good opportunity to tell him.
Yeah, I took an Uber to the racetrack. I had no idea where the hell I was going because I'd never been there before. And the lady's like, "Where should I drop you off?" I go, I don't know. She just drops me off at the Speedway. I'm standing in the middle of this parking lot going, where the hell do I go now? And see a security guy, and I'm like, hey, where are they racing? And he's like, what are you talking about? I go, the Optima Challenge? Where is that? And he goes, it's down that road. And then he took off. And I'm like, so I start walking with my luggage because I was going to take a flight right out of there, because I was going to take a flight out of there back home. And so I start walking. I come to a fork in the road, and there's like 3 roads, and they're like 5 miles long. And I'm like, now where the hell do I go? So then the guy comes flying back in his truck, and he's like, I'm having a bad day. I'll take you down there. So that's how I got down to the track.
Oh, nice.
Wheeling up with my luggage, and I come up to Jeff like, hey, Jeff. And he looks at me, and I'm probably thinking, man, what is this guy doing? Because I'm like toting my luggage around with me. And
that's nothing wrong with commitment.
I felt so dumb. What's that?
There's nothing wrong with commitment.
That's right.
Man. Purple suitcase, the girlfriend's suitcase. Just for a joke, we put a little cupcake tag on it. Just for a joke, So at the airport, I gotta go, oh, there's my bag right there, a little cupcake hanging off it.
You're lucky to
I'm walking up to
get you out there.
I'm walking up to Jeff, thinking, oh man, I'm gonna look like a freaking idiot,
Well, Mike, listen, there's one thing you are is genuine, and there's not a lot of that in this business. So,
that's true.
When you come across someone who's a nice person that's real, is worth way more than somebody who's full of shit. And unfortunately, in this business, you get surrounded by a lot of people like that. People telling you how great you are, or especially when they think there's things happening. Like when TV things were kind of happening a lot. Man, I couldn't turn around without bumping into 5 friends. And I still got my core group of friends, but it's really funny how things change and how people change, or how people assume you're going to be because you got a little bit of what they call success. Like some people write your book for you. And that's a weird thing for me, because I've seen people act different towards me when they see things happening. And I'm like, I fought tooth and nail. Anything that happens for me, I fought for, every single way to do it. So have you ever noticed that, like people acting weird towards you, or different relationships, or more challenged as things get better? Or
Oh yeah, I mean, when you, like you said, when you're on television and your show's going, you have more friends than you can shake a stick at. And the hardest part is separating which ones are legit or not. And the easiest way to do that is when your show ends, see how many phone calls you get. You know what I mean? Because a lot of them move on and start to show their true colors. And I think that happens with everybody at different levels. And then I realize why other big celebrities are the way they are. Because years ago I was dealing with Tim Allen, and at the very beginning he was very standoffish, and I was just a big Uber fan. I'm like, oh my God, Home Improvement, and oh, he's a car guy, and
that's awesome.
And how cool is this? And he would just kind of like,
whatever,
and have people deal with me, and then you fast forward a couple of, then we're doing lunch, and then we're hanging out, and I'm selling his cars for him, and then you find out he's just a regular guy. But you realize up front the reason they are kind of standoffish like that is because they've either been taken advantage of a few times, or they just don't know who's what anymore. And unfortunately, that's very rampant in this business.
Or what is this guy gonna do for me, or what is he gonna do? What's this guy want? I can see that.
Well, you know what? I mean, I think, Mike, and I think I spoke to you about this before, but, I think the best bet when you deal with people is put your intentions out up front, because people usually know what they are. So, when I was talking, even with Senior, when we were talking about, even with the first show that never even happened before this show, he was like, what do you want? I said, well, I don't want money from you, but I just want opportunity. I want to use some of what you have to kind of build onto what I'm doing. And I said, and I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that, because when you do that, you clear the air. it makes it almost more comfortable of a situation, because if you go to Paul Sr. and you're in a car, he didn't even know I was in the car business. We first like hung out fishing because of Nick. But then the second time I met him, he goes, "Oh, nice to meet you." And I'm like, "You prick, I already met you once." We hung out for like an hour. And I don't know if he did that on purpose or just to like, mess with me. But once we started talking about doing things, everyone has their hand out. Like they think if they're working around a guy that he's going to make them rich. And the reality is the opportunity, and a lot of the guys that knock him that have been on his show, and listen, he's rough around the edges, but that's the type of guy you fall in love with. Like if you liked him on the show, then you meet him in person, you're going to like him because that's exactly who he is, right? So like in a way you have to accept him for what you really wanted him to be in the first place, but some of these guys I've seen, like I won't mention any names, but I met some dudes, in public that were talking shit about him and saying bad things. And I'm like, you know what? That man made you famous, flat out. And what you do with it is your opportunity. I think some people put so much weight on him. Like as soon as they meet him and they attach themselves, like my relationship with him, really easy. I never asked him for a penny. Everything I did, I paid for. I did it. I did this. I did that. And I told him, I said, when I want something from you, you'll know it. Like joking around because we became friendly. But it was like, when I said, hey, come sit down and do my podcast, or, hey, let me do something on the show, show me. And then, luckily in the last episode, he filmed it at my shop. That was to do the right thing by me. He really didn't have to do that. He could have filmed that at his shop and had me been in there for 20 seconds or whatever and just a blip. But he had the car sent here and he did it on purpose. And, so I think it's when you talk, even I see it. I see people that come to me with like this weird agenda that they think I want to hear. It's almost like, you know what I mean? It's like if you had to write a script of what you think someone's going to, what I want you to think. And it's like they say it, and I'm just like, I feel like I'm not really meeting a real person. So going back to Mike, when I met Mike, he had such an honest, sincere personality. That to me is like the most important thing. Everything else is like that's how then you start building relationships and getting to know each other. And now Mike's like a brother to me,
Yeah.
But with with friends, I've seen friends of mine that I have to struggle to like be like, no, dude, like whatever you're thinking, that's not happening. I'm me. If anything, I'm a nicer, sweeter version of me as things get better. You know what I mean? Because like I feel like, okay, I could breathe a little. Like that feeling that you could just say, okay, things are starting to really happen, and so.
The funny thing is, I can tell you, like Jeff, one day he followed my website or me or whatever on Twitter. I'm like, Jeff Allen, who's this guy? And I didn't even know who you were. So I just kind of looked into it, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. And next thing you know, you were on CNBC. I mean, I'm like, wow, he's on TV now, But it was just kind of funny that I didn't even know who you were when you followed me. So, and now I know him. Now we're talking.
I like to follow, people that are in, like I'll go on there all the time and I'll like somebody's page or like somebody's post, and it's amazing how, sometimes that will inspire them to do things. Like I'm sure you do too, Ed, but I get like emails and people will be like, oh, I went out for my first time ever in my Honda Accord, but I went out and I autocrossed. And me, I'm like, good for you, way to go out and do something. And, I try to get my people to, I guess you want to call it influencing or whatever, but I want people to go out and experience the car world at their level. And, like so many people I meet all the time, oh, I can't afford to do what you do, or I can't afford. And I'm like, you can. There's all different levels, It just doesn't start at, and me, it was, I started with one car, and then one became two, and then two became 10, and then it got out of hand, I'm blessed, I'm very excited that, I'm building cars that I get to have fun with now. It's not just so dollars and cents driven, which makes it kind of nice. And then, we're doing a lot in the movie and television rental deal. So for that, to be back into that years after I got out of it, because I was in that in '03. And I was in it for quite a few years, and then I kind of stepped out of it for a while, and to be back into it's pretty cool. So
Yeah, that's interesting. That Ninja Turtle van we did for the movie
yeah,
was kind of like an eye opener. Like you should be doing more of that. But again, it's connections and who do you know, and But that's so. How did you get lucky to meet a car girl, Meg? Let's talk about her for a second. She's pretty. She's pretty amazing on her own, right?
yeah, she's super amazing. I'm really, really lucky because, I don't have those Brad Pitt looks. But years ago, I was at a nightclub, and a buddy of mine turned around and,
Were you doing your moves? Were you doing your moves? Or?
No. The funny thing was, I wasn't even looking for a girlfriend or anything. I just wanted to hang out, and do things. So I went to this nightclub with a buddy of mine, and it's a funny story. We drove his NSX. He had a 92 NSX at the time. And we used to rotate between who was going to drive. And at that time, I had a 91 twin turbo 300Z. So it happened to be his night. And she walked in the nightclub, and he said, "Hey, man, there's a girl that's your height." And it was because she was head and shoulders taller than everybody else. She's like 6 foot, and my buddy Randy's like 5'6", So he was like, "Hey, you should dance with that girl." So I went over and I danced with her, and I didn't even get her number, nothing. We left that night, but when I left with this impact of, wow, I should have got her number. How am I going to find this girl? It was in San Bernardino, California. I didn't even live I lived in Temecula. I didn't know where she lived, where she was from. And I had to beg my roommate that following Thursday to go to this other club that's 35 miles from that club, but I figured she might be there if she ran the circuit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I took a gamble, and I had to bribe my roommate, drive, I'll buy, I'll pay for gas, I'll pay for everything.
Yeah.
And I went, and she wasn't there, and the night was going on, and then all of a sudden she showed up. And I was like, wow, this is meant to be,
The odds of that, that's crazy.
Yeah, right? And then we sat by the bar, and she was talking about buying chickens, and she had horses, and so far from me. I'm more of a city kind of guy, I guess, but I was like, horses and chickens, but I'm attracted to this lady, and she's so smart, and she's going to college, and she was at the time she was running the Mission Inn Hotel. She was the head of she was like the night manager and the head of, or second in command of security, whatever. And so we planned our first date, and I got lucky because normally what do we guys do? We wait 3 days to make the call. Well, I didn't. I called her the very next day, and she goes, "Wow, that's impressive." And I go, "What's that?" She goes, "You called me the next day." And I'm like, "Whoa, okay, good. I'm making points, right?" So our first date, we go to Newport. I want to impress her, so I take her to Newport Beach, and I go to this restaurant. We're eating, and then I was take her for a walk along the pier. And as we turn the corner, there's this real high-end restaurant, and up pulls this Ferrari Testarossa. Well, I start freaking out. I'm like, "Oh, wow, look at this car. I'm in love, right?" And she looks at me, and she's like, "I don't see why you're so wound up about it. It looks like a kid car to me, And at the moment, I should have put two and two together. I mean, a girl who knows what a kid car is, that's pretty impressive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but for me, I was kind of torn. I went back to my roommate and said, "How'd your date go?" And I go, "Oh, man, it was awesome. It was epic. She's wonderful. When are you going to go out with her again?" "I don't know if I am. She thinks a Testarossa looks like a kid car." It's kind of like two worlds of devastating stuff. But come to find out, her dad, raced Porsches for years. He had an old Jaguar XKE, so she was kind of not really in that world, but in that world and then we met up, and, she was driving a 92 Honda Accord, and I got her out of that and put her in an 87 Corvette convertible.
That's awesome.
How those things happen, and I'm really excited because I think that, Meg's, in my opinion, she's one of the first, true car girls that are out there, for the industry, because there's several times we've been in the shop racking our brain and going, why is this engine making this noise, and what can it be? And I kid you not, she's diagnosed it so many times. On one of the this is a prime example of this. They didn't show this on the show, but they should have. Perry, he had broke one of his motor mounts on his Hemi powered hot rod, and so he had replaced them in the shop. Well, I pulled the car out, and I mean, it sounded like it was about to pop in the low end. And he's like, "Oh, I don't know what I did. I don't know if I didn't let it get up to operating temperature before I romped on it or whatever." Meg comes out, not seeing anything that was going on, put anything together, and she's like, "Look, I don't think it's in the motor. I think it's in the oil pan." She goes, "I think there's a problem there. Did you hit something with the oil pan? Did you do something that where the crank is, coming down and hitting something inside the pan?" And come to find out, Perry had taken a shortcut, and instead of jacking up the car properly like he should have to replace the motor mounts, he literally jacked it up on the oil pan. Well, when he did, he dented the bottom of the pan in. So you know how those pans are made. So the pickup was actually hitting as it was turning over, and it was making the noise that sounded like a rod knock.
Wow.
Yeah. So
saved him from ripping it apart, huh?
Yeah. So all of a sudden, we crawled underneath there. We looked at the oil pan. Yeah, sure enough, there was a decent sized dent in it. Pulled it off and saved him from having almost a heart attack. Because he just finished that car, and to sit there and have a rod knock after you put something together, that's just devastating.
Yeah.
So it's certain things like that she just no formal training, no nothing, but she can walk into the shop and she's like, you guys, we could be working on the front end, and she can say it's coming from there, and then it's like a light bulb goes off, and so I'm very blessed with that. I keep telling her, I said I should, rent out your services, set up a tour, to go diagnose problems. I think that'd be kind of a cool show, right?
Common sense, right? It's like sometimes, and I say this all the time, like sometimes you got to walk away from something and come back, and it sounds like she has that like fresh eye, just common sense, looking back and saying, "What is this telling me?" Sometimes you get so caught up in what you think that like I immediately think about all the worst shit that could happen. Oh my God, and then sometimes it's like, hey, wait a second, what about So I try to always go backwards and think simple first, but that's
we're too inside baseball sometimes. And
Yeah.
And we're like, and I agree with you 100%. And then somebody comes out, and sometimes it's as simple as that. It would make a great sitcom. But you're sitting there and you're racking your brain for hours. You're sweating in the shop. You're in the engine bay, and you're trying to figure it out to get it together. And somebody walks by like Meg and says, "Oh, you should check the turn signal handle," and then walks away. And oh shit! What were we thinking?
Awesome. No, it's good to see. It's good to see you guys. Following you on Facebook and everything, and then she does all like the TV stuff like that by itself.
Yeah.
Impressive.
That's what I was gonna say. How did that transform into TV producer?
It's a weird thing, but what happened was a backup is years and years ago she wanted to get into photography, and not formally trained or anything. She was a finance manager at a Toyota store, which was because of me, because I put her in the car business so she could handle my hours. So when we were both working, I was a GM at a dealership and she was a finance director. So, but on the weekends and our time off, we were still doing car events. Well, a buddy of mine was an editor for all these different magazines under Source Interlink at the time, and he needed somebody that could go out and take some photos for him one time that he couldn't be in an event. So Meg went and did it. And the next thing you know, he says to her, "Hey, could you write like a 600-word, article?" And she did. And then one thing led to another. And then at one point, before the television part kicked in, she was writing and photography, doing photography for 12 different automotive magazines. And so that was pretty cool back in the day. And then I got a phone call from a good friend of mine and said, "Hey, I'm going to do this show. I want you to come out and be a consulting producer on it for the first season of Car Warriors," which was a speed-driven show. And when I got dropped into that, what I call a powder keg, didn't know what I was doing. But yeah, I'm coming on, and we're trying to set up trade outs and get all kinds of things online. And basically, after being there for 2 weeks, I shook my head. And I said, to really be successful at this, you need to bring somebody like Megan and who's got a reputation with all these manufacturers and their car parts.
Mm-hmm.
And so we brought her in. Season 1, she was the trade-out producer, and she generated $540,000 in free product for the first season of Car Warriors.
Yeah, we were asked to do that show. It was like a 3-day build, right?
Yeah, 72 hours.
Two different times we got approached by somebody over there to do it.
Yeah.
It's just like 3 days? Like, really? Like, 3 days? Is that what you... Just 3 days you want to build? Yeah. I've never been accused of being fast, man. So 3 days, I was like... When we did the flex thing, we had 6 weeks. So now we're talking, we may be doing something different, but I don't know if I want to do the competition thing again. So we'll see.
Yeah, originally when I got involved with it, I met with the creators of the show months before I got hired on as a producer, and I told them they were nuts. I said there were cars that were being finished on overhauling in 7 days and they weren't finished. So
okay, yeah. So when it's fun, not to interrupt you, but I was on the set of overhauling. We did the Nomad, right? And it was like me and Chip. It was like 3 a.m, and I just happened to stop in because we went to see Dane Cook, I think, at the Laugh Factory. I was wide awake. I said, let's see if anyone's at the shop. And now it's just Chip and that guy who TIG welded the headers. I forgot what his name was, but amazing TIG welder. And I'm like, it's just Chip here? Like, I'm hanging out. I'm like getting changed. I'm getting back in my work clothes. I'm like, let's do something. So I look at Chip and I go, there's no way this will be done in what was it, 4 days, from that point. He goes, oh, it has to be because it's for Leno. I was like, oh, shit, okay. And again, like, the reality is you finish a car, just like anyone. I mean, you could think of every possibility and still, miss a quirk, something's rubbing, this isn't perfect,
Right.
But 3 days is like, and then I think they knocked it down to 2, right?
Yes, what we did was what we found out, and you'll be amazed at this, Ed, was we found out after the first year was like we picked this pro team, of builders, and then we would bring in other teams to challenge them, and it was kind of that Joes versus pros type scenario. And 72 hours was really almost too long. And I know it sounds crazy, but hear me out here. What was happening was the guys were getting fixated with how far can we take this into the extremes, and you were ending up with some really talented guys, but at the end you weren't ending up with really talented cars, and so what we did was when we talked to the network, we're like, 72 hours is a long time, that the reason they came up with that is that's when the Navy SEALs said that you can go 72 hours without sleep and, you're not going to go really loony. And we had a medic on staff.
I don't know about that. I've tried it and I went loony.
Yeah. So the network said, well, we'd like to see it cut back to 48. And really, at that time, we were like, okay, let's take it in a direction of muscle cars. I was buying all the cars for the show, and I had to buy 2 identical cars for each episode. And as identical as you can get. And what we found out from season 2 was by going to 48 hours, they were still finishing their builds. There wasn't anything crazy or over the top, but they were really clean, well-built vehicles in a 48-hour time period. And those cars actually went out in circulation quite a bit and got a lot of play at different car shows and stuff because some phenomenal painters came on the show. And I'm not taking anything away from the All-Stars. Ian Rizal and, Rhino Templeton and Rich Evans, the guys that were on that show, and even, Tina Sharp, to build a car in 72 hours is a feat in itself. But, what was happening is these guys are so alpha and they're so creative and they were just going over the top. And then you ended up with something that was, I don't know how to explain it, but a lot of those cars I didn't even want to go into circulation. I just wanted them to be blown up. That's from a producer standpoint, because Speed came to us and they go, hey, we want to put these cars on tour. And I was like, no, the only car you can put on tour from this season is the Volkswagen. And that was an Ian Rizal build, and they did an awesome job of chopping the top and making that car sick. And that was the cleanest car out of all of them, and mostly because it was overthinking, how far can we take this? Every episode, instead of thinking, okay, let's work it backwards. Like I'm sure you do at your shop, or I do. When I look at a build and I'm trying to think of, okay, my timeline, and I'm working it backwards all the time. Okay, well, if it comes out of paint at this time, then I can do this can be working simultaneously. Mm-hmm. And what happens is they're also looking at the competition across from them. You know what I mean? And that puts a real competitive edge. Well, what's that guy doing over there? No, he's doing something bigger and better than that. Mm-hmm. And the 48-hour builds, like I said, they came out really clean. I mean, we're building Camaros, we're building Novas. Nobody was doing any crazy over-the-top body mods.
Yeah.
Which are costing you a lot of time.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. And not that they weren't creative and cool, they were, but they were also stuff that, you could say could cost somebody in a finished product,
Yeah.
Especially in a competition show,
Yeah, well, when we did Car Wars, it was 6 weeks. They kept pushing us to do more and more work. The producers were like, no, do it, just go for it, do it. And then we actually, my guy Dave, he was in charge of all the dates and times and contracts. He was supposed to be handling all the sponsors, but I had to talk to everybody. And Flex called me up because he came to the shop and we had a little calendar on the wall, like 23 days left, 22 days left, 24, So he happened to see it, thank God. And he goes, Ed, he calls me up after he left the shop and he goes, on your wall, it says you have 23 days left. And I'm like, yeah. He goes, you only have 10. And now I thought it was some TV nonsense. I got on the phone with him. I was yelling. It was this whole scene. I don't even know why they didn't put it in. So it was probably the best TV because I was having a stroke. And then, Flex says to me, he goes, Ed, calm down. He goes, go look at the rules. So I go, Dave, go look at the rules. Now I have Flex on the phone. I'm sitting there, the smoke coming out of my ears. And my buddy Dave's reading. And then he just turns beet red. And I'm like, please, God, don't tell me, you messed up. So, we actually won a couple more days. We won like 5 days, but we still lost a whole bunch. But the producers didn't care. They were like, man, sink yourself. I don't,
It's good TV, right?
Do it, yeah. So.
Yeah, for example, one of the cars that was really ambitious, like we took 2 Datsuns, right? And we were giving these guys 350 motors and the transmissions. They got to do a full swap because they were all original, Datsuns. Mm-hmm. So here we got these Datsuns on there. Well, the All-Stars come out with this great idea. We're going to make a speed racer clone, which is great. That's perfect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they end up doing the car. Well, first off, they needed the 2-part foam to, shape it and do all this stuff. And that was hilarious in itself because, these guys, they work in their own shop. So they pick up the phone and they're like, hey, send me that 2-part foam. And I do it too. I get a habit of not knowing the exact, particulates. Well, 2-part foam, as you know, it comes in a variety of kinds.
Density and yeah.
Yeah, so the first time they order it, it's too soft. Right?
Oh man.
It's like a pillow. The second time they ordered it, it was too hard. So finally we got in the show, we actually ended up getting the right foam for them. And they did the glass job. They got the car done. Well, they finished the car in 72 hours. Well, unbeknownst to the audience or anybody else, is that car from setting up overnight, it collapsed the suspension from the weight, right? Because so we couldn't get it off the lift because it literally went down onto the wheels and tires and they wouldn't turn.
Oh, got fiberglass. Okay.
Yeah, so the fans don't see that, but that's like we had to pull it off the lift. We had to get it into the shop, and what we used to do before we tested either car was we would literally put them through a service shop there at Picture Car Warehouse, and we'd have to make sure that the brake lines, mainly for safety, because we were putting the judges in the cars and having them drive them. And we had George Barris, we had Jimmy Shine, and we had Mad Mike. So you didn't want an accident to happen on set, even though that might have helped ratings. But so this particular car, we had to literally change the springs overnight and get it set up where you could actually steer and drive it because it had gained so much weight and compressed. And those are the things that you don't think about when you're building. You're just thinking about the timer. I got 72 hours to finish this. I'm going to book through it. So
that's anxiety at its peak.
Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah, but the Speed Racer, when you look at the car and you can see it in some photos and stuff. I mean, it turned out really cool. It was a great concept for them to do.
Yeah.
And it was kind of an homage to George Barris, who was one of the judges. So it was kind of fit.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's funny. One of my guys, we got into a competition on. He had a Honda Civic, and he goes, "Yeah, in my world, you can't mess with me. You could do the American cars." But I said, "I don't care if it has wheels. Let's go." I said, "Let's have a competition. Let's me versus you," because he had a big ego. He's a good guy, but had a big ego. So I said, "You build your Civic. I'll get a Honda of some sort." He goes, "Yeah, okay, no problem." So I find a Honda SI, which I so regret what I did to it, but at the time it had to happen.
What year?
It was an SI CRX.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So he was doing a hatchback, and he started doing a wide body, right? And I do them a little differently now that I've learned a little bit, but he was doing it all out of foam. And I'm like, that foam, I don't think that's going to work the way you think it's going to work. And he's like, "I don't need no advice from you. You're going to try to screw me." I'm like, okay, So I got this SI over the weekend, right? Because we were like, hey, we'll start now. We'll end at this show. And whatever we're done, we're done, So I found the SI. I cut the roof off. I was going to do a Hayabusa motor over the rear. Wow. And then do a center drive convertible CRX, right? So I got the car on Friday. By the time he came in Monday, I had the roof cut. I had the seat in the middle. I had all the steering, the gas pedal, the clutch pedal, everything working. And I was starting to set up where I was going to put the Hayabusa motor. And he came in and saw how much shit got done in those 3 days. And he just he was like disgusted. So that night, he didn't really say much to me. He was real quiet. So that night he fiberglassed everything he did, because now I'm pushing him, right? I kind of got so much work done that he felt he was behind the 8 ball. So he fiberglassed this whole thing, and I was trying to give him some advice for what not to do. So the heat from the fiberglass kicking melted all his foam, and the whole car was just like a sad marshmallow.
Oh, wow.
He came in Tuesday morning, and I come walking in, and he is so angry. And I'm like, I wasn't really happy it happened. I would rather him have been successful, but he was so arrogant. He wouldn't listen to nothing. So I walk in, and I just see him like holding his head, looking at this car. And I'm just like, we had to break whatever kicked, because some stuff didn't kick. So you really didn't mix it. Like, when you're mixing fiberglass, it's easy to mix 4 containers, not 34 containers. Right. So he started getting the mixing raw. So some of the stuff was kicking really hot. Some wasn't kicking at all. So he had this like sticky, we literally had to throw most of it, like break it off, put it all on a tarp and throw it in the dumpster. And he spent like a month just getting the styrofoam and the fiberglass off the car. So I wound up not finishing the CRX because he was just broken. When he saw that the steering was working and the brakes were working and the seat was in the middle and everything was cut, the floor was cut. And basically in 2 days, he was like, I'm done. Then the next day his car melted. So I used to leave a marshmallow on his toolbox every once in a while, and he would just curse me out every time he had a chance.
Oh, wow.
I still regret not finishing that car, though. I think about it all the time. Did you see the Mike, the kid we had on with the Hoonigan truck, the mini Hoon?
Yeah.
Have you seen that truck, Jeff? It's like the mini. It's a Honda with a motorcycle engine in it, but it looks like the Hooligan truck or the Hoonigan truck, the Ken Block truck.
Yeah. It's a
Alex Sane. Alex Sane is
a truck. It's an import.
Yeah, it's a Honda. It's a Honda N. It's like a little Honda pickup truck, right?
Yeah, it's like what they use. Like for a while, you weren't able to import them in the States. They wouldn't pass EPA or something. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. They made the little Hoonigan truck.
Yeah. And that was kind of like my idea, but with the CRX, a little rear-wheel drive thing would have made like, because we had a CRX, we had a Hayabusa that was whacked in the front, like the wheel and the nose messed up. So we had the motor. I still regret not finishing that car.
There's time. There's still time, Ed.
Yeah,
there's time. After your SEMA build.
After this one, I have another project in mind, but I don't know. After that, maybe.
Yeah, you got to go back and finish it.
Maybe, yeah. I shouldn't have got rid of the car. I wound up giving it away to some kid. I should have just stuck it somewhere, threw a tarp on it, you know. But after I saw how broken he was, I lost my spirit. I didn't want to like drag him kick him when he was down, you know.
You're too good of a guy.
Hey Jeff, are you building something this year for SEMA or?
I am. We just announced that we're teaming up again with AutoNation's Auto Gear program, and we're going to be building a truck for them this year at SEMA. I'm not doing any of my radical builds this year. I want to take a year off, and we were real excited about the news that, you know, for years I've been friends with Dennis McCarthy, and he's been doing all the Fast and Furious franchises since Tokyo Drift till current. And every year I'm like, hey buddy, how do I get my car on your movie? You know, or how can I do something like that? And then when he called back in November after SEMA, and he said, hey, your Volvo is really killer, and we want to put it in the new spin-off Hobbs and Shaw movie. And I was just like ecstatic, you know. And then they turned around and they took two other cars of mine, my Australian Ford Falcon, which was at SEMA a few years ago, and then they also took Ronin, my '63 Falcon, and all three cars were used in the movie. And I was just like, oh, this is, you know, a dream come true. It's almost fast, you know. The name says Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw, but
Right.
so. Yeah, so it just shows you persistence pays off, you know, and I kept bugging him for years, and I was like, I want to, you know, get something on there. And then I was so excited for the Volvo because I thought, you know, the more attention it gets, the more money it's probably going to make when it goes across the block. And it's for charity. So, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, that car's amazing. It's one of my cars, and I would have never told you. If you would describe that car to me, I would have the wide, maybe I would have loved the idea, but I wouldn't have thought it. Then when I saw the car, I couldn't not look at it. I was like, can't stop looking at this thing. And that's what I love. I love things that are a little different. There was remember that, I don't know if it was it this year, was that LS Rabbit, the Volkswagen, the red one?
Oh, I didn't see that. That's cool.
That's really impressive too. Yeah. So
do you remember the Beamer a few years ago? It was kind of a rat BMW, but it had the old like the Flying Tiger, like teeth on it.
I think I do remember that car. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was kind of leading me towards that way. Was like, you know, look at these cars that are people thinking out of the box.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Sometimes you need to look into other genres, if that's the right word. I think you need to look over the fence a little because, you know, like if you're around all your type of people, you all have the same idea, the same style, the same, and you may have a couple, oh, my wheels are this, or my wheels are that. But when you look over that fence, sometimes you go, oh shit, look what this kid had the balls to do, you know, and it's refreshing. It's really refreshing. I had a young kid, this kid Corey, that I had on my podcast probably a couple months ago, and he has a really, I'll message you his Instagram name, and you see what this kid did. It's a green 300Z turbo, twin turbo, whatever. He did one of the first engine bay, like a flush, you know, where he gets rid of all the hoses and everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful. And, you know, he's a young kid. He was helping me out here. He paints and he does some stuff too. And it was just really inspirational for me to meet like a younger version of how I was that I maybe have lost a little bit, that I'm like, this build is bringing me back to. You know, I get that feeling, you know, that vibe. But I'm going to send you pictures of this kid's car. You're going to be blown away how clean it is. It's cool. It's like a matte green on the outside, but the engine bay is all gloss green. But it's like super killer clean. So it's like that when you see these young kids taking chances. I'm like, that's where I used to be. You know, that's what I like about it. So I'm kind of lucky because I could stay in the middle of it. And you too. You know, some of these like older, like I'm a restoration guy or I'm this type of car guy, and that's such bullshit. Like I like everything with wheels. It don't matter. It doesn't matter what brand, what year, you know, where it came from. So it's awesome. We're at almost an hour and 23 minutes. If you
That's
would,
the longest podcast I've ever done. That's a wrap.
I know.
Yes.
I think we got to know a little bit. Maybe we could do one again sometime, you know, in a couple months, or maybe before SEMA. We'll touch base and you're definitely an inspiration to me. I watch what you do
Thanks, man.
how you move through things. And, when I first met you, I'm like, no shit. I'm like, this guy's doing what I want to do, and not in a bad way. Like, I think a lot of people, I've gotten good at looking at people and saying, like, shit, how did this guy make it? So doing the podcast with you is, it's interesting to see, kind of how you figured out to do what you love doing without being as weighed down by customers. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like, I don't want to, I mean, I love my customers, but I'd rather be working on my car all day.
Right.
So that's kind of my goal, is to kind of, bend it a little bit to just go that way to build fun stuff. So, but it's definitely
that's kind of our whole thing. I mean, like Megan and I, when we started Flat 12, the whole idea behind it was we were only going to buy and sell cars that we liked, period. We were only going to build what we liked. And we always felt like somebody didn't like it, so be it. We liked it, and hopefully it'll sell and make good money, And as it evolved after the show and then partnering up with Pennzoil and some of these other great sponsors, it rolled into other ways to express ourselves, which then turned back to what we did years ago. It's kind of funny how things go full circle.
Mm-hmm.
But, 2003, I had 40 cars in a rental fleet renting to the movies. And, you fast forward, and I kind of got out of that for many, many years. And then all of a sudden I come back full circle, and now there's so much going on. Like, I just recently played a prisoner for a couple days in Albuquerque on a show.
I to ask you about that. That's
So, and
I don't know if it's a compliment, but you look like you make a good prisoner.
Oh, thank you. That was kind of the funny part about it. I was like, I've never been in prison, and then
that's good.
Yeah, so that's good. And then I got there, and I thought, it was going to be Orange is the New Black, and it showed up, and it was all like denim blue, and I was like, who runs this prison? Jay Leno? I mean, what's
that's funny.
You know what I mean? So, but it was cool to get back into that, and we recently, we did a TV show that's coming out, and I built 22 cars for the show.
Wow.
Built or bought, I should say. Some of them I didn't build, but there's ones that we had to match and make twins of, because they were the hero cars, and then they needed a stunt car, and then there was stuff that just had to be found, and I think part of that passion I love to do is chase cars.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
I hated the show name, the Car Chasers. I absolutely hated that when it came out. I was like, God, what are you doing? And I got the network execs going, well, if somebody's flipping through the network, CNBC is all about business. We want to catch their attention. And I'm like, yeah, but couldn't we come up with something cooler than the Car Chasers? Yeah. But in all reality, it's one of the things that even to this day, if somebody calls me up and they're like, hey, we need XYZ car for this movie shoot or this television show or something, I get excited about the passion of going out and finding it.
Yeah.
It's like an Indiana Jones or something.
I've done that on a few small things, but like we had to find a motorcycle for a beer commercial, and like everything is like, you have a week, and this happened, but you have a week, you have 4 days, you have 2 days tomorrow. That's like how it always happens. So we found, and I explained to the guy, I said, well, we're going to buy a motorcycle, and if it has a major problem, we're really screwed. So let's buy two of them, two similar motorcycles. We'll get them in. Whatever one runs good, that's the one. So we had a bike that we sent one of my guys inside my Honda Element, okay? He drove to this guy's place. I don't know where. I think it was in North Carolina somewhere. Stuffed this motorcycle in my truck. Had to strap the doors closed because it didn't barely fit. Then we got it back to the shop. We had to strip it, paint it, electrical, wiring, like you wouldn't believe. Then we had literally like 20, maybe a full day and a half to do it.
Ooh.
And we got it done. It ran good at this, that. It went, the commercial went great. But the pressure is so like right now, and they throw money at you when you have a problem. Like when we were doing the Ninja Turtle thing, if there was a problem, they'd be like, we'll just give you more money.
Right.
But, it's not really the money. Well, we'll just give you more money. And then finally you realize that that's how they fix problems, just throw money at it.
They do. They do. And it's interesting because, it's you're dealing with, sometimes I get frustrated, I'm sure you have too, where you're like, they tell you they want a certain car, and you're like, okay, I've got that car. And then the director wants to see pictures. And I'm like, just close your eyes and imagine what you just asked for. And it's there, But they're very visual people,
Yeah.
and then they change their mind too.
Oh
Because
God, that kills.
their creativity, and they're just
Yeah. By the time you have the next conversation with them, they already passed what you wanted from them.
right.
And it's
Right.
like, holy shit, like we almost just bought something for. I remember we were looking for a vehicle, and I spent like 2 days. I forgot what car it was, a Panamera, something. I forgot what it was. And spent 2 days. I found like 5 or 6 different options. Blah blah blah. I call them up. I feel like a hero. I'm like, okay, we got this one. We got this one. This one's here. This one's that much. And they're like, oh yeah, we're not doing that scene. I'm like, you could call me and told me, like, I'm here worrying about it. But it's I mean, it's exciting too, but it's like, you put your head in the chopping block. It's stressful. It's like a whole nother level of stress to be involved with people that need to make super fast decisions.
True.
It's just like,
but it's also hugely rewarding. Like when you watch, J.J. Abrams' reboot of Star Trek, and forever in history, I can sit there and tell everybody those are my Corvettes that the young Captain Kirk is driving off.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, and like when you look at a movie like Mission Impossible and the Vatican scene, well, those 14 of those cars were mine.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So when you do those things, you look at it on the big screen, and you're like, wow, that's cool. Or like, another one that I was really proud of is when they called me and they needed Boattail Rivieras for the movie Crank. And so I supplied 3 out of 8, I think, that they had for that show. But I look at those cars and I'm like, oh, and then I ended up buying back the hero car at the end. The one that didn't go down the escalator. And so
funny.
Yeah,
that's like having a hit song, and it's gonna be around forever.
Yeah,
yeah.
You may not be singing it, but maybe you wrote it, right?
Yeah. You're gonna see these cars.
Well,
they're gonna be in these movies forever. That's really cool.
Right. So
to me, it's the pressure. Like, I remember moments like when we won Car Wars, all that pressure was like choking me when they mentioned my name. Turned into flowers, right?
That's right.
When we walked into Leno's garage, the Chevy wouldn't start. We were the last assholes in the car. Okay, they come out. Everyone's at Leno's garage. It's stressful. You're in line. It was really like Jay wasn't worried about it, but everyone overhauling was like super strict. Everyone's trying to be respectful. They come out and they go, I may have told you this, they go, Golden, the car's not running. And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, you're the last one in there, go figure it out. And I'm like,
oh, wow.
So now I sent my guy Petey and I said, please, because we kept it super simple. I was like, we're not going to have this thing elaborate where we could have 10 problems. We'll have 3 attachment points, powerboat, ground, or whatever, remote. I said, check those quick, but I know they're solid. There's nothing wrong. So just start looking for other shit that it could be. And Petey goes in, he's looking. They come back out and they go, Golden, get back in here. Your guy's not getting it. Now, this is in front of a lot of people, and important people. And I remember walking in, and literally as my foot hit the ground in Leno's garage where the car was, where they were shooting, the car started. So my guy Petey, thank God I could kiss him for it. He screams, Ed, it wasn't us. The ignition switch was loose. It's okay. We're good. I fixed it. And I look at him and I'm like, oh, thank you, Petey. Because now everyone's like, oh, good. And I'm sitting there like, and all it was a nut, a little nut. Now think about that. If he didn't see that little tiny screw in the end of an ignition switch is stopping filming. There's hundreds of people. There's food there. I mean, it's like, so I had people ask me about, I want to do TV too, like you did. And I'm like, yeah, it's kind of cool when it works out good, but it can go wrong. I mean, it can go left really quick. Sure. And the pressure you feel, I'm sure you felt it. I mean, I remember when we were doing the Car Wars thing, and I remember thinking, like, we had an airbag blow in the basement of the show. It was nightmare. That's a whole episode, I could tell you. I remember thinking a human being shouldn't be able to handle this much pressure. Like, I'm like ready to, and not like real, like heroic, like somebody saved someone from burning, but those are real heroes. But like the next step down and just bullshit nonsense pressure that you bring on yourself. I remember saying, like, I might die right now. My body was trying to tell me this is enough. This is as much as we want to get. But as soon as
level was through the roof.
It's off the charts. But then as soon as you get to that finish line, it feels great. And you're like, oh, thank God. like if you watch the end of the Car Wars when they said my name, I was like, oh, I remember feeling like I was gonna pass out because it was like all that tension to that point. So
Yeah.
but yeah, it's definitely good to see what you're doing. It's almost like a I love to see it. It's really refreshing. I'm one of those people that I love to see people I know. I mean, knowing you from Facebook, then vaguely, and then to kind of meeting you. Because now I see you as a friend, and I see these great things happen. It really makes me feel good.
Hey, I'm just glad you guys got together. You're making a podcast. You guys are killing it. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, we have a lot.
Kind of started when Discovery reached out to me and said, "Hey, do you want to interview our people on TV?" And I was kind of like, "Well, I know people who do podcasts," and then I thought, "Wait a minute, maybe I should." But
Hey, that's all. That's it. Just jump in, man, and have fun with it. Everybody needs to have fun.
Talk to interesting people, man. It's fun.
One thing I want to say in closing is, Jeff, one thing about you is you're always great with your fans, and I always see it, and it's been pretty cool. I mean, you interact with everyone, or Meg, or both of you guys, so that's just really cool for everyone, I think.
Oh, thank you. That comes back to that. That's a result of SEMA and Chip Foose, and I don't mean in a negative way, but I waited 1 year at SEMA to meet Chip Foose for like 2 hours in line.
Yeah.
And, the guy comes over, and I kid you not, Ed and Mike, you're gonna die. Guy comes over. We've been waiting in line for 2 hours, right? And he's signing autographs, and the line's moving. And I kid you not, the guy comes over and goes right in front of me. This is where the line stops. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me.
Wow.
And I was like, we've been waiting. He goes, I don't care. And I said, wow. And I realized that Chip probably had another engagement. He had things he had to do.
Yeah.
But for me as a fan, I was like blown away. And,
Heartbroken. Yeah.
And I told Megan, I said, right then and there, and this was way before my show, I said, if I ever get there, I'm going to stay till the end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But you know what? I'll tell you a quick. I'll tell you a quick story about Chip. We were at the Funkmaster Flex car show. He's signing autographs, right? His wife walks up, says she's interested. Can my husband see the car? Long story short, Chip comes up, right? He hung out with us for like half an hour. And almost, again, not to say it in a bad way, but in my head, I'm like, there's like 200 people waiting to sign, to do. And he was great for me, but I was kind of like, okay, I feel like I'm taking too much of his time because we had like 8 cars there. We were winning. But he was really nice. He drew a picture of a kid with we brought a kid with a wheel that was in a wheelchair with us. He drew his wheelchair. He spent time with us.
Nice.
But you know what? I think it is tough because sometimes it's out of his hand. You know what I mean? Like he probably didn't say, hey, screw that guy, got to get out of here.
No.
And he probably, you know what I mean? He probably wanted to, and I guess when you get to the Chip Foose level or like even, senior, we're eating dinner at his place, at his restaurant in the corner, and there's people like this from every angle staring at him. And like, it's funny, the women will walk up and say, you're going to sign an autograph for my husband. And the husband's over there like, oh God, this is embarrassing. And, so I guess when you get to that level where even like everyday people know who Chip Foose is to a degree, maybe not as much as Paul Sr., but if you say Chip Foose's name, even people loosely connected to the automotive world will know him. But Paul Sr., you could say that in another country, in another language, and people, my God.
He's like Hasselhoff.
To meet Hasselhoff. So, but listen, it's good to see, like Mike said, it's good to see that I feel the same way. Like I've not anywhere near what you do, but I've had a handful, of people stop me here and there, and saw some of the things we've done, and I'm like so blessed. I'm like, oh my God, like I think I enjoy it more than they do. Yeah. Like I had one kid follow me at a gas station. I thought he was going to rob the place, and he kept looking at me funny. It was like 12 at night, and he's looking over the register and the thing, and I'm like, what's about to happen in this place? And he's like, oh man, I'm sorry, you're like from that golden shop and you did overhaul, and I'm a fan. I was trying to figure out where your shop was. Can you take a picture of my kid? And he pulls his kid out of the car. The kid's like half awake, gagging, and I'm like, So
that's when you sign the forehead.
Yeah. Well, that's what's funny is when we did that flex show, my guy setting up was wiped out. He set up all the cars, the battery chargers, cleaned them, detailed them, and he was passed out. And I tried to wake him up. I'm like, Foose is here, and Chip Foose is standing right there. And he's like, oh, get away from me. He's like pissed off, right? So we have a picture of Chip Foose, like, with my friend's face snoring. And he's like, oh, you know. So.
That's cool.
So,
yeah, I just think it's important for everybody in the industry to realize that, you know, it's like with any kind of sport, you know, NHRA takes it to that level too, where they realize the fans are what's making it happen.
Of course.
You know, so.
Of
I
course.
still got the hat too.
Yes, you do, Mike. Thank you so much for representing. Look at that.
I don't have one. Look at all
It's
this.
just sitting right here, man.
You need one, Ed.
Look at all this real estate you
I'm
got.
gonna have to
You
send
need
him
one. Yeah, he needs one. We
Yeah.
gotta cover that up.
That's right.
Oh, boys.
Well, I guess I'll see you guys at SEMA then.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Awesome.
Again, I'm your biggest fan, and Mike, you know I love you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's do it again.
All right. You guys
Yeah.
take
Without
care.
Meg, she's going to be on next without you.
Oh, let's put her on. That'd be
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
That'd be fun. Ned, tell her all your dirty secrets.
There you go.
All right,
guys.
brother. Thank
Take
you.
care.
All right. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Jeff. Thanks, Ed.
Take
Yeah.
care. Bye.
Bye.